Good morning and welcome to the Killik & Co market update. Last night, the S&P 500 index closed at a record high for the fifth consecutive day. Here's the 10-year chart, and you can see the index has now moved ahead of that earlier record high that it hit in early 2022. So what's driving this optimism? Well, there is still a hope that interest rates in the US will be cut in March of this year, and also we're in the middle of company reporting season. And so far, a lot of big corporations have been reporting results that have been ahead of expectations. One of these companies is Visa, which reported results this week. Visa has reported an increase in revenue of 11% for the final quarter of last year, and an increase in payment volumes of 9%. And that increase in payment volumes does bode well for the wider economy because it does suggest that consumer spending has been quite resilient. Here's a 10-year chart for Visa, and like the broader S&P 500 index, it hit a record high a couple of years ago. It performed poorly in 2022, but it's now recovered and has moved on to a new record high. Visa has no doubt been a beneficiary of the decline of the use of cash, which in turn will be correlated with the ongoing closures of bank branches. Here in the UK, for example, it's been announced this week that Lloyds will be closing a further 1,600 branches. This chart shows the declining use of cash in UK transactions. There was actually a small increase in 2022, which is thought to have been caused by people using cash to help them budget more easily in the cost of living crisis. But this increase is thought to be a temporary blip in a very much downward trend. Another company that has beaten expectations this week has been Netflix. The shares have been on quite a rollercoaster ride over the last decade. The company did particularly well during lockdown when people were signing up to multiple streaming services, and the shares went up to nearly $700 each. After lockdown, many people started cutting back on some of their multiple streaming subscriptions as inflation started biting, and subscriber growth at Netflix fell and the shares dropped below $200. More recently, however, the company's crackdown on password sharing has been a success, and the company has seen a lot more individuals signing up for their own subscriptions. It's worth considering the remaining opportunity here. There is still a lot of market share that could be taken by these streaming companies. As an example, in December 2023, the average Brit spent 260 minutes per day viewing broadcast, and that's both traditional and streaming. The BBC and ITV still accounted for the biggest chunks of this at 54 and 34 minutes each. Netflix accounted for 23 minutes, or just over 9% of the total, so there is still a lot of scope for Netflix to grow. And finally, just a few thoughts on shareholder voting. It's now relatively easy for UK investors to vote on their shares, but in practice we see relatively few people using this right. A survey by Equinity in 2022 suggested that less than 25% of UK investors regularly use their vote. It's very straightforward for us to submit votes on behalf of Killik clients, so please do give us a call if you'd like to hear about this in a bit more detail. It's also fair to say that many institutional investors do not necessarily use their votes to challenge company management. A recent example of this is the annual general meeting for an investment trust called the Finsbury Growth and Income Trust. Here's the performance over the last 5 years. While the longer-term performance of this investment trust has been very good, it has been below the benchmark over the last 5 years. At the annual general meeting this month, the company put forward a resolution to significantly increase the amount it can pay its directors, and this was voted through by over 98% of voters. Here at Killik, our fund research team has recently put together a new stewardship policy, and this gives a sense of how they use their votes for the accounts that they manage on a discretionary basis. So please do let us know if you would like to have a look at this policy. Moving on to have a look at next week, it's looking very busy on the corporate calendar, and we are expecting results out from the big tech companies, Microsoft, Alphabet, and Amazon. That's it from us. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next Friday.